Hello, can you hear me? Dude, you look like bigger version of Kevin Hart as well. Think maybe some feedback here. Bigger version of Kevin Hart as well. Yeah, if you have any questions regarding um, just anything, the whole aim of this live is just to answer questions that you guys may be having. The camera's over there regarding programming projects. Breaking into tech. Um, just literally anything. I'm just here to chat. I think a lot of times you get to see me through the videos that I create, and a lot of that is, you know, I don't want to say, well, scripted. It is scripted. There's research that goes into creating the videos, making sure that things are right, but I don't quite have a lot of time to answer questions one on one, and that's what the aim of this live is for. I'll be doing more of these, so if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will start going through them as they come in. Yeah, there isn't a timeline, so feel free to jump everything. Hello, Cherish. Is a master's degree in computer science or engineering worth it? That's a very interesting question. That's a very loaded question because depending on your situation, a master's degree might be worth it from an immigration standpoint. If you think about it from an immigration standpoint, where you may not necessarily, you're trying to get more time or at least spend more time in the country to get that traditional route of getting an internship, then getting an internship and then getting a company to eventually sponsor you, then yes, a master's degree is worth it. But from a pure career perspective, it depends on what you want to go for as well. I have friends who are really, really into machine learning and AI, and that's what they want to specialize in. And for stuff like that, it makes sense for you to go back to school and learn the theory, do a lot of the grunt work in actually, understanding how these things work because there's some things that no matter the amount of programming projects you do, you're not going to learn them. So in that case, I think it makes sense to go back for a computer science stroke for a master's degree in whatever you're doing. But if it's just for a regular software engineering degree, then I don't see it as being worth it in my opinion, for a master's degree at least. Hello, Chisom. Good morning from India, TensorX. What's the basic knowledge for UI UX? That's an absolutely great question. I am the worst person for UI UX specifically. I think well, there's UI and there's UX, right? UI is user interface, creating the buttons and all that stuff, but ultimately user UX is the user experience, right? How the user goes through the flow. Are certain things easy for them to find? Are they dropping off on certain pages? That's UX side. But as far as what you do and how they all work in terms of UI UX, I am the last person to ask. For my personal projects, I personally just hire someone on Fiverr to design the UI for me because I am not good at UI. So um, I do think it is important to at least know how to implement the UI in certain front end languages, right? Say you're a front end developer, right? When someone brings that UI to you, you should at least know how to kind of break it down into the components, make sure they're reusable components and all that stuff, how to write clean code from UI. But as far as the actual design, making it look aesthetic, trying to figure out the right color palette to match, I personally have no experience or no, and I don't even have an interest in learning that. So I'm not the right person to ask. Yeah. I'm having a hard time deciding either Flutter or React Native as the app GUI, as the app UI, and go for the backend, looking from a future standpoint. I think the idea of trying to think about the future from where you stand is very interesting to me because it's it's like I feel like I used to be so strict about saying, okay, I want to make sure whatever I'm building is future proof, right? In the future, it should be a certain way. In the future, it should kind of like withstand the test of time. But I found that if you think that way, then you spend a lot of time deliberating. You spend a lot of time doing research and not doing the actual work itself of building the thing. And the reality is, with the way frameworks and languages are right now, they're pretty much. I think most of them can do the basics, right? They can not just the basics, they can go above and beyond and do what you need them to. And trying to over engineer to make sure it's good for the future is kind of like paying interest on a loan that you haven't taken because you're just spending a lot of time trying to figure out, all right, how will this thing work in the future? How will that thing work in the future? And I think for the most part, just do minimal research, right? If the language or if you find a language or stack that's good at doing what you want it to do, then just build it. And if you come across do the minimal research. If you come across a roadblock, then you can change, right? You can pivot. Most of the companies and the frameworks and the languages that we're seeing that people are building nowadays, they didn't start with what they started with, right? They changed at some point in time, and that's part of the whole process. So if you are comfortable with React and you want to use React Native for your app, absolutely go for it, right? If you're comfortable with Flutter, like I am, I actually have a Flutter project that I'm working on. I think it'll be interesting to show. Um, yeah, if you are comfortable with Flutter, go for it. Go seems to be the hot programming language now. If it's something that you want to learn, absolutely go for it. Right? There's no aim in over engineering a decision in the future. In that, things may change. Do the research. If you want to implement something and Go seems like the right language, or Go whatever language seems like it's capable of doing what you want it to do now, then go for it. And if you need to switch, then it's not wasted knowledge. Technically, that's the way I tend to look at it for my projects. All right, let's head over to LinkedIn and pick some questions. Good morning from Nigeria, Ololade. What was it like breaking into tech in the beginning? Um, it was for me. It wasn't like I didn't quite see it as breaking in, even though it was. I just saw it as pursuing a passion, for lack of a better way of explaining it, right? I'm always curious about how things work. And so I've always just asked myself, like, hey, um, how does this thing work? And then once I figure out how it works, I then go, well, in the process of figuring out how it works, I then go build a thing. And that's pretty much how I kind of broke into tech, where I would ask myself, how does a mobile app work? And then I'll go build the mobile app. I will ask myself, how does this web application work? I'll go build it. And so a lot of the projects that I've worked on, let me see if I can pull some actual examples here. So if you go to, um, Let me know if that answers your question, Cherish. Um, hey, Manish. Um, I am muted. Okay, let's see if I can figure out the audio. Interesting. All right. Sounds like the audio is gone on Instagram. Let's see how I can fix that. Um, mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Okay. Seems like it's back now. Mic check 1 2. Can you hear me? Mic check 1 2. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go back to answering the questions. Let's go to. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Manish. Hey, Manish. How long did it take you to get comfortable making content about tech and software engineering? Follow up, what are some important pointers you'd give to someone starting out in street content? I had a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I had a lot of somewhat, well, not quite imposter syndrome. I had imposter syndrome posting my videos to LinkedIn for some reason. I'll share about that initially, but when I first started posting to Instagram, well, I actually started with YouTube, and I wanted to post videos about what's the word? Lead code. I really, really love lead code, by the way. I don't know if you guys can tell. I love, love, love lead code. Like I could do lead code I could keep doing the problem for years. I am really, really excited about that. But I spent so much time figuring out how that worked and just the patterns and the problems that I fell in love with lead code. So I spent a lot of time um, just basically doing lead code problems my final year of school. And what happened was, as I fell in love with it, I decided, hey, I'm going to go to YouTube and teach people some of these um, problem solving techniques. And my first few videos were like lead code problems. And then after that, I decided, hey, there's a lot more to programming than just lead code. And so I wanted to share, how memory in the computer works, for example, right? Or how Dijkstra's algorithm works. All these things that I find really, really fascinating about how code works. And I just started putting them out one after the other. And then initially, at some point in time, I worked with a coach and we decided to start posting on LinkedIn. And so it took some time to get more comfortable with posting on LinkedIn, specifically because LinkedIn is seen as such a, sorry, it's not seen. LinkedIn is a professional platform where you kind of, it's in like a workplace, right? You typically you don't want to post your work things on LinkedIn. You don't want to post your personal stuff on LinkedIn. But I realized at that point in time it was a little bit of imposter syndrome where, all right, I'm coding, I'm writing the projects, I'm doing the apps, and I'm out here putting my thoughts out there while they're senior software engineers with 15, 20, 30 years of experience seeing what I'm doing, right? What does that look like? Or why should I be the one speaking of those things? And then through time, through working with a coach and speaking to my manager, he's now my old manager, but my new manager, he's now my old manager, but at the time he was my new manager, and turned out he had seen my work on Instagram, and he encouraged me to start posting on LinkedIn and to start posting on like other platforms. And so that was how I just continued posting, right? It was more of I have a passion for this thing. I genuinely love it. If I wasn't getting paid, I'll still be doing it. And I want to inspire others as well who want to who are either trying to do similar things to what I'm doing, or just basically the more people you find that have the same passion as you, I don't know, it's very interesting to share. It's very interesting to just um create the content, create the videos. Like, I'm working on databases today and I learned this thing that's super, super interesting. I want to share it with other people. So they either understand it from the perspective that I learned, that I understand it in, because a lot of times explanations are always one way, right? You ask someone, how does microservices work? They'll give you the dictionary definition for microservices. But there's so much more to it that they don't quite give, because they don't either know it or they don't know how to explain it. And for me, it's a challenge, but I also enjoy the challenge of figuring out how to do that. Yeah. Follow up: what pointers would you give to someone starting out in sweet content creation? Just post. I think it's the cliche advice that we tend to give a lot of people who want to start content. Just post. Figure out what you want to post about and post, right? The idea behind it is not to get 2 billion followers, right? Yeah, if the followers are nice, the views are nice, but if you genuinely enjoy the content and the stuff that you're creating about, your people will find you. Read this book. The book is called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. I'm gonna try to do it here. Hopefully when I switch to the smaller monitor, you can still hear me. Yes, I put it there. Yes, the book is called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. 10 Ways to Improve Your Creativity and Get Discovered. I read this book and I immediately, I purchased it November 6th, 2020. That was when I ordered the book. And I immediately just started, I like every reason that I had not to create content immediately just went away after reading the book. So it's very, very interesting, read it. It's a very, very short read, it costs like eight bucks, but it's super, super, it helped me kind of expose that creative aspect of me. And it's a book that I'll highly recommend. Yeah. All right. Next question. Okay. Let's go back to Instagram. I hear the mean promising. I mean the promising. Are technical certifications with some experience more worth it than a master's degree? Technical certifications are good. They, at the very least, show that you have an idea of what you say you do. So if you get an AWS certification, or you get some sort of certification from, if you get some sort of certification from AWS, Azure, you take a course on Udemy, the certification shows that you at least have a high level idea of what you're supposed to. Now, are they worth it than a master's degree in CS with some experience? Man, I don't know. You're putting me in the hot seat. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I think nothing. The only thing that beats traditional education is experience, right? If you clearly have proof that you've done this work before, or you've done work that is similar in complexity to it, then nothing typically beats that, right? That's what employers are looking for, right? Can you jump in? Can you come in? Can you make valuable contributions to the project? That's really what they care about. Now, a master's, in some extent, it does teach you, what you need to learn. It's 2 years, not as much time, but I would say having experience in doing something typically trumps whatever certification that you'll get, because you have practical experience, right? It's one thing for me to teach you this is what a car looks like. It's one thing for me to show you pictures of the car, tell you this is the engine, this is the front light, this is all of that, and then the job requires you to now drive the car, right? It's a completely different ball game. So to an extent, I think it is. I think certifications with experience is worth it, but it also depends on what field that you are. I would always pick experience more than just certifications or education, because as I said, what they care about is, have you done the work before? Can you do the work? That's it. Which backend language would I recommend? Which, well, some of these questions are interesting. Uh, Looks like the audio is gone again. Um, can you hear me now? Okay. 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 Which backend language do I recommend for someone with solid ground in JavaScript? I think the idea of languages is very very interesting to me, and I'm actually going to make a video about this. I think less of I think less of it as languages and more of frameworks, right? Think about your experience or think about your learning in terms of frameworks, because ultimately the languages are tools used to create value. And instead of saying, you know, I'm going to go learn JavaScript or I'm going to go learn C sharp or I'm going to go learn, Python, I think you should be thinking about it as, okay, I'm going to go learn the Django framework, or I'm going to go learn the .NET framework, or I'm going to go learn the Node.js, backend framework, or I'm going to go learn Flask in Python, right? Or something else. And these are all different programming languages, right? Sorry, these are all different stacks. These are all different frameworks within those languages. And if you think about it that way, then you realize that all these frameworks within those languages, they're all very similar and they're used to kind of create similar things where it's either you're creating an API in the back end where data is going to come and flow through the API to go to the back end, or on the other side, the data is going to go the other way, backwards, right? And so I think you should think about it in terms of, okay, what do I want to learn? Again, a great tool for this, I would share my screen again, but um, I don't want my audio to cut off. If you go to roadmap.sh and go to the back end flow path, it shows how you should be thinking about, your learning, which is less in terms of languages and more in terms of the frameworks and the things that you should be learning. For example, you should learn maybe object relational mapping, for example, right? If you're working with APIs and pulling from the database, there's object relational mapping in .NET C Sharp. There's object relational mapping in Spring Boot. There's object relational mapping in Python Django, right? That's the concept that you should be familiarizing yourself with, because that's ultimately more important than just knowing the Python itself or knowing the Java itself or knowing the C Sharp itself, right? Think about it less in terms of less of the languages and more of the framework, because the frameworks are more of what create the value for the big companies. Yeah. Let me know if that answers your question. All right. Back to LinkedIn. Minish asks, what is my workout routine in the gym? I think I shared a video about this earlier. I started doing a functional fitness workout at the gym, and it changed the way I think about things, because I used to be very just pure lifting iron related, squatting 500 pounds, deadlifting 550, just pure iron. And, now mixing that with running, basketball, all the things that I like doing, it didn't quite feel good, right? It's hard for you to, deadlift however much and then think your back is going to sustain you going to run like 5 miles the next day. It can, but it's not going to happen for a long time, right? You're not going to be sustainable doing that. So instead of doing like a functional fitness program, I don't know what the guy is putting in there, but I just show up, open an app, and I just do the workout. It's been working for me. I felt great. All the pains, all the aches have gone away, and I'm also lifting heavier than I used to. But there's some functional fitness stuff in there. So I do functional fitness by, what's his name? Um, I don't remember his name. It's a functional fitness workout. If you search up functional bodybuilding on Instagram or wherever, it should be the first one that pops up. Do I track calories? Do I track calories and macros? No, I don't. I like to enjoy my food. Um, I am aware of how much I eat and what I eat, but I don't track everything like, oh, this gram of protein, that gram of protein. Now, I think if I had a conscious goal to lose weight, or if I had a conscious goal to, you know, gain weight or lose weight, then yes, I would track those things. But because I'm not actively trying to lose weight or gain weight, I'm not tracking it. However, I am conscious about what I eat and when I eat. Yeah. Let's go back to Instagram. Um, all right. I can see the comments. Apparently, I was muted and you guys let me hear it. Okay, I'm back. All right. I won't share my screen again. Um, Andy. Andy asked, what advice do I have for aspiring developers who are entering the tech industry? How can they set themselves up for success and make impact in the field? I laugh because Andy is my youngest brother who just started college in as a computer science student as well. Um, you're cooked. I don't know how else to say this, but you're cooked. The plates have been washed. The dishwasher has been turned on, and yeah, no. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're not cooked. I think there are several there's like ups and downs in the tech industry regarding jobs. There's so many factors that affect it, and for the most part, you can't quite control it. All you can do is do your best and let and do like control what's within your control and just let everything else go, for lack of a better way of of putting it. Because when the layoffs were happening, there were a lot of talks about, oh, it's happening because of X, Y, and Z. It's happening, and for the most part, all of that was happening because of the way the Feds raised interest rates and inflation from COVID and all of that. And the reality is, you really can't control all of that. Now there is a talks about AI replacing jobs and all that stuff. And could AI replace jobs? We really don't know. But if it does happen, the idea is, what will you do to stop it? You, Andy. Well, I'm not talking to Andy specifically, but what will you do to change it? Right there really isn't much that's within your control to say, okay, I'm going to change how things work within the tech space or stuff like that. Right? Control what is, do what is within your control. Right? What you can do is make sure you learn. Um, don't go into tech for the money because you're trying to get a simple job that will pay you a lot of money and you're not going to do much. That's not the reality anymore. Clearly, companies that are hiring want people of a certain caliber, right? They want people who know what they're doing, and they clearly have their choice because there are a lot of people who are now getting into tech. The market is saturated. So ideally, what you should be doing is just figure out how to make yourself better, right? If it's experience that you need to gain, work on projects, do things that show the employer that you are actually about this tech thing and not just someone who is in the tech field because it's nice, right? So my advice for you is, one thing that helped me during my time, and I know my time was completely different, was when I would go talk to employers, when I would go talk to people at the career fair, I had evidence of the work that I had done, right? I had um, the programming project that I had worked on deployed on my phone, right? I literally had it on I had it, if it was on web app, I had it deployed on a school server that they gave us. I bought a custom domain and I connected the domain to it. If it was a mobile app, I deployed it on the App Store. And when I went to speak to them, when I went to go talk to them, and they're asking me, "Oh, tell me about this project," I would be like, "Bring out your phone." I would go to the actual site where the site was deployed. I would go to the site where the app was deployed, and I would show them, and they would actually see that, oh, okay, he's not just talking, right? Because this is how they do things in their company, right? I'm talking to you about how I deployed an app the on so and so site, but you guys just did that last week, right? Like, I have not better experience, but I have almost the same experience. No, not the same experience. I'm doing things at your level. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm doing things at the level where you can clearly tell that I'm not just, once I come in, the barrier for me to actually get work done will be a lot lower than someone who hasn't actually done the work, someone who hasn't done the experience. And that's the advice that I'll give, right? What can you do that'll show the employers that, okay, you actually do this programming thing, right? Odumodu said, show walk-ins. Show walk-ins, right? Find the projects, work on the projects, make sure they're complicated, deploy them, and when you go to employers, talk to them about the complexity of the project, talk to them about the story, right? Why you worked on the project and stuff like that. So that's the advice that I'll give. Actually, go into tech like with the genuine passion and an interest for it, and not just to get a simple job, because maybe in 2021, 2022, right after the pandemic, they were giving jobs left, right, and center. That's not the case anymore. If you're working in a company and you got laid off and you're having a hard time finding a job, it might be even harder, because even if you have that experience, they don't want people who have been seen to coast. And I'm not saying people who are, laid off, they coasted. I'm saying you actually have to show that you can come in and provide value. And that's what they're typically looking for. Cherish asks, what's my tech stack? My tech stack, for the back end, I typically always just go with Firebase because it's simple, straightforward. If I'm developing a mobile app, I use Flutter. If I'm developing a web app, I use React. I haven't developed a web app in some time. I hear Next.js is the next big thing now, so I should probably hop on that. If I'm deploying, I think I used to use Heroku, but I've switched to using Azure or AWS now. I do pay for it, but some of the stuff that I get from them is actually worth it. And yeah, that's what I currently use. I do want to explore using other applications. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to leave them in the chat and I'll check them out. All right, back to Instagram. Hi, I'm a grad student, but I have a background in computer science. Due to the fact that I'm an international student, I don't have the option for co-op or internship, but now I'm looking to gain experience. What do you mean you don't have the option for co-op or internship as a grad student? Technically you should. I came in as an international student myself, and I believe you have the options to do co-op and internships, except if that has changed. But I would recommend going that route. Definitely getting a co-op or internship. It looks good on a resume. Nothing beats that. Solid experience at a company, writing actual code, shipping code that they paid you for, that's in production doing something. Nothing beats that. So, but if you could clarify, that would be great. Yeah. Mr. D. All right, back to, am I missing anything? Okay, back to Instagram. It's been about 4 to 5 months of trying to get a remote role. Maybe I'm going about it the wrong way. I would like to ask what you think helps stand out to land a role. The job market is tough, man. To be honest, the job market is not as simple. It's hard. It's hard for everybody. So it's not just you. I think, especially even right now, it's a lot harder because it's the end of the year. People are out of office. If you get someone to interview you right now, if you get an interview right now, you may not hear back till January, depending on how fast they like to move. So depending on how fast or slow they move. So don't feel bad about that whole situation. It's not just you, right? It's typically not your skills. But I like to go back to thinking about the problem from, stepping back and think about it from like different levels. So the first is, what type of roles are you applying for? And do you actually have the experience for those roles, right? I found that even there was a point in time when even I was job searching, and initially I would just apply anywhere face. I would apply anywhere. Like if there was an opening, my application was there. If there was an opening, my application was there. And then I started realizing that, yeah, you can apply for 200 jobs, 300 jobs, 400 jobs, but how many of them actually match your preferred qualifications? And after a while, I started realizing that if there's the general qualification and then there's preferred qualifications. Especially in a market like this, they typically want you to have that preferred qualifications and less on the general qualifications, right? So look through the type of jobs that you want. At least if you don't have the preferred qualifications and it's a job that you really really want, then it makes sense for you to then go and look through your background and figure out ways you can get some of those preferred qualifications. If, for example, you are applying for a job in cloud, right? Or you're a software engineer and you're applying for a job where they require you to use the cloud and you don't have any cloud experience. If you don't have, like, you understand what I mean? It'll be hard for them to even justify calling you back to do like a job interview. That's the first part, right? So, do you have the experience required for the job? That's the first thing. Second thing is, all right, say you have the experience, right? How are you branding yourself? What does your resume look like? What does your LinkedIn look like? From the coaching that I've been doing, a lot of people make a lot of mistakes in their resumes. Again, I think the next time I go live, I'll make sure my audio is set up, but I'll show examples of what proper resume looks like, what some mistakes that I've seen and all that stuff. Not just your resume, what does your LinkedIn look like, right? Sometimes someone sees your resume and it looks good, then they go on LinkedIn and they your resume doesn't quite match your LinkedIn, right? So what does that then look like? That's the second part. Now, if your resume is good, your LinkedIn is good, and your resume is good, your LinkedIn is good, and you are finding it hard to, you're getting the recruiters to reach out to you, but once you have a phone call with them, they say, nah, then what are you saying to them during those conversations? What are you saying to them during those job interviews? I think interviewing skills and the actual job skills are two completely different things, right? What are you when they ask you about, your experience, right? Tell me about a time you've done X, Y, and Z. Are you just talking from now until thy kingdom come? Or are you actually, using the STAR method, right? Situation, task, action, and result, right? There's some people where you tell them, all right, tell me about yourself. And they'll say everything. They'll talk for 5 minutes without mentioning where they've worked, right? Or you say, tell me about yourself. They'll talk for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and at some point in time, you could even see that the interviewer themselves are not comfortable with the whole conversation, right? So, like, how are you selling yourself properly, right? So, those are the three things that I typically look at where, all right, maybe I have the experience, I have the skills, but I am not getting the job, or I don't have the experience. I'm not even hearing back. What does my resume look like? What does my LinkedIn profile look like? So my advice would just be to step back and just try to analyze yourself, right? Do you genuinely have the skills, right? Do you genuinely present yourself properly when you're talking about yourself, on LinkedIn and your resume? When you're talking about your experience, right? When you're doing those lead code style interviews, are you actually passing? Not quite passing the interviews, but are you convincing people that you're the right person for the job? You specifically. Like think about it that way, right? Am I selling myself to this person in a way where they look at me and say, "Wow, yeah, 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 this is the guy," right? Yeah, he clearly has experience, or even if he doesn't have experience doing what we want him to do, he has done things that are more complicated. That what we're asking him to do wouldn't be as hard. Yeah, think about it that way. What would you what would you say has been your biggest accomplishment this year? Um, what's my biggest accomplishment this year? Um, that's a good question. I'll say helping my youngest brother start college, helping my younger brother start school. For a while, we're trying to help him get started with school and all that stuff, and just seeing him now in university studying computer science has been my biggest accomplishment this year. It's something that we'd been trying to do for a while, and I'm glad we finally did it. Yeah. The URL I mentioned earlier is roadmap.sh. Let me just confirm it works. Roadmap. Yes, roadmap.sh. That's the developer roadmap. Can a visually impaired person get a job as a web dev? Yes. There are accessibility, not requirements, but there are accessibility aids that can help people with certain who are differently abled to get to do the jobs that are required. So similar to how someone who's visually impaired can still use a phone and they can do certain things, there are accommodations that are made with specific companies, not all. By law, it should be all, but I'm not sure if all of them do it, but you definitely can. Yes. For beginners coming into tech, what would you advise to stay inclined and motivated? Because it gets really boring sometimes. That's a good question. I think um, a lot of people see the tech journey as a linear, like a sprint, right? They see the journey as, you just come in, you do 5 months, you do 6 months, you do 1 year, and you're in. It's a continuous learning process. It's a continuous process of figuring out, all right, I know this, I don't know this, I need to get better at this, right? Figuring out what you know and what you don't know, then the distance between the two of them. And my advice would be to figure out a pace that you can go comfortably at. If you run, you know that the first time you start running, everyone wants to sprint, right? You start running, everyone wants to sprint. But if it's a long race, if it's like a 10K or even like a half marathon, you definitely want to start slow and take it one day at a time, right? Find a learning path that works for you, right? I mentioned roadmap.sh. It's a really, really good resource. Find a path that works for you and use that. And take it one day at a time. If you know you can only do 2 to 3 days a week, do 2 to 3 days a week, my brother. Take it slow. Take it at a pace that is comfortable for you. And once you're at a point where, okay, you've learned, you feel comfortable learning, start working on projects, start building things, even if it's simple. My first project was a web calculator. It didn't even have scientific, what do they call it? Scientific mode. It was just a calculator that can do 1 times 1, which is 1. I don't know if you knew, but it can also do 2 times 2. Just a simple calculator, and then that's literally how I started. And then eventually I realized, oh, I wanted to build more complicated things, right? There are these mobile apps, there are these web apps. I have this project where I want to transfer music from Spotify to from Apple Music to Spotify, and Spotify to Apple Music. What does that process look like? Let me go build it, right? There's scientific notations. Thank you, Ricardo. Yes, right. It didn't have that, right? So I have this. I basically have these projects where I just started building, right? And so just take it slow. Take it very, very slow. Don't do too much, start small and just gradually increase the complexity each time. All right, let's go to LinkedIn. Um Not sure what that means. Okay. Uma, keep going on. It's great seeing you grow every day. Thank you very much, Yusuf. I really appreciate it. Thank you. My program doesn't have a co-op. You're currently in Canada. Oh my dealer. Do you not use MongoDB? I not recently. I used to use MongoDB a lot, but not recently. I honestly don't know. I feel like one of those databases where they're more fun alternatives. That's not a good thing to say, but it's I can't remember. I can't figure out a use case for MongoDB. There are, right, like it's to score it is scored. I say scores. It stores documents in the. It's a NoSQL database, but like, oh, if I want to store data, MongoDB is in the first place that I think about for NoSQL databases. I honestly don't know why. Yeah. Why Firebase? Firebase is simple. Firebase has everything, man. It has authentication, it has storage, it has cloud functions, it has. The question is, why not Firebase, right? It has everything that you need. It's a backend as a service platform, and that's typically why I use it. Not the best. Yeah, that's no. That's typically why I use it. It has everything I need. If I want to focus on mainly the front end, right, how the application works, and I just want to store data and pull data, then it's always Firebase. But If the backend requires more design, then I typically go with Postgres. All right, let's go to YouTube. My bad. What are things you what are things you learned that built your confidence? So, what are the things you learned that build your confidence? What did you learn that made everything click to you? That made things easier for you to understand, like learning a new framework. All right, let's break it down one by one. What are the things that I learned that build my confidence? Not to sound like a motivational podcast, but once you have undeniable proof that you are who you say you are and you've done the work, everything just aligns, right? Once you have undeniable proof that, okay, I'm building web app, like I want to be a web developer. Have I built web applications? If you have, what do the web applications do? Are they complicated enough to the point where I can show this to someone and they can understand that complexity, right? I can show this to a fellow developer and they can understand that complexity. Have I deployed it, right? Are users using the application? Once you've done the work to an extent, that's where the confidence comes from. For me personally, right? I've built mobile apps, I have apps on the App Store, I have web applications that I've deployed, I have all these things that I've done. And it's like at some point in time I get a little bit, whenever I used to get that imposter syndrome, I no longer have it. Or not in the scale of content creation and the work I'm doing. Maybe sometimes at work when I'm in a completely different phase, it gets challenging sometimes. We can talk about that later. But it's like once you have undeniable proof that you've done the work, then that confidence just comes with it, where you know that I've done this thing before, right? I've done it. I've gone through the phase of not knowing and done the work, reached out to the right people, done the research, used my resources, whether it's Stack Overflow, whether it's ChatGPT, and I saw it through till the end, right? Once you've done that multiple times, you realize that it's just a process that you have to keep repeating over and over and over and over and over again. And that's just how programming is, right? That's how it is. Because today I may be working on backend services at Microsoft, working on the substrate layer, the biggest data organization in the world, working on APIs that handle over 2 trillion requests. When I started, I didn't know, excuse my friend, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I've gone through that process of figuring it out before, and I just have to do it again. This time it may be a little bit more challenging because it's in a different space, but I just go back to using my resources, right? Once I know that I've done it before, I know I can do it again. And that's where the confidence comes from. What did I learn that made everything click to you? I think it's just understanding that, again, as I've said it before, but I've done it before and I can do it again. And each time you do it, it's not as hard, right? Each time you do it, it doesn't get as complicated as the way it was before or the first time you saw it. Yeah. Like with learning a new framework, it's always just the way I think about it is I'm going to go build something that I've built before or something that I kind of understand how it works in this new framework. And that's it. So if I want to learn how to build like a mobile app, for example, using React Native, I'm not about to go build Facebook with React Native. Only me. Facebook, come on now. You know what I mean? Start small. Build like a to-do list app. I know people hate on to-do list app and simple apps, but the idea behind them is they teach you the basic operations within that framework, right? The simplest thing to create some sort of outcome within that framework. And that's typically how I learn new stuff. Yeah. Okay. Allison Ntwale. As a junior engineer in your first role out of college, how did you make use of your one-on-ones with your manager? That is a great question. I actually have a video coming up on this, but I will talk about it right now. How did you build that relationship? I tend not to advocate for myself in them as I should. Building relationships with your manager is absolutely important because your manager is, if you don't have a good manager, right, your career just, it can go left really fast. If your manager is not advocating for you, if you don't have that rapport with them where they kind of understand where what you need, where you're coming from, and how to get job done, then it really it's hard for you. And this is how I suggest you do it. I think you should get to know your manager. First off, it may be hard for you to do that switch, especially when things between you and them have been some type of way. But I advise that you do it. Get to know them. Ask them, right? Before the work that we're doing, we're all people. Like we are a human being. Sorry, I said we are a human being. I'm a human being. You're a human being, right? I sweat, you sweat. I bleed, you bleed, right? Get to know them as a person. I'm not saying you should be close friends with them, right? I'm not saying you guys should be paddy, right? But get to know who they are, right? Get to know what they like to do outside work. If they have a family, if they have children, ask them what did they do over the weekend, right? Build that personal relationship. Share yourself to share what you are comfortable sharing. The next thing to do is okay. Now, during that one-on-one, once you've shared that, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long that one-on-one is, next thing you do is to give them an update on what you are working on. Now, don't give it to them like you're giving them the update during daily stand up. They've already heard the daily stand up update, which is just a quick what you did yesterday, what you're doing today, and then what you plan to focus on. And if you have any blockers, don't do that. This is what you do. What you've accomplished, you tell them what you've accomplished on a high level, then you give them context. The reason why I say you give them context is because they don't understand what you're doing. They're managing 15 people, 16 people, 17 people in some companies. That's a lot of people to manage, but maybe between 7 and 10 people, right? It's hard for them to keep track of what everyone is doing. So what you need to do is give them context, right? I fixed this bug. Great. How did you fix the bug? What processes did you go through to get to a solution to fix the bug? Who did you reach out to fix the bug, right? What did you learn, right? What did you try that didn't work? And how did you get to the realization that, oh, this won't work? Let me try doing this instead. That's what you should be sharing, right? Because a lot of time, once you just tell them, this is what I did to fix the bug, they see it as a simple something. Like you just, oh yeah, this is very, very simple, and they fixed it. But the reality is you jumped over hoops, right? You climbed mountains to fix this thing that was simple, but that process has a lot of value. It shows them how you think, right? It shows them how you are approaching problems. Once you share that with them, you can now ask them for feedback. Hey, based on what I've done and based on how I accomplished this, how would you have done this differently? Is there another way that I should approach these type of problems when I see it? They will then give you feedback and say, yeah, I think you should think about it this way, think about it that way, right? Sometimes they'll say, oh, no, it's great. I think it's really, really good that you showed this. The process of getting to the solution is important for you to share it, because that's where they start to see hints of you doing things at the next level, right? Are you using the resources that you have to get shit done? Excuse my French. To get things done, are you using those resources? So share it with them. Give them context about what you're solving. If you're going through challenges and you need help, that's what you tell them. All right, I'm going through this. I'm going through X, Y, and Z. What have you tried to help you not go through the X, Y, and Z? That is also very, very important, because you don't want to be the person that just comes to them with problems after problems and problems. I'm going through ABC. This is what I've tried. I've tried this, and it's not working. Can you give me tips? Sometimes it's not even about asking them for help. With my manager, I tell her everything. I'm like, yo, this is the problem that I'm facing in this place. This is what I'm doing here. This is what I'm doing here. I don't need help. I just want you to be aware that these are the trials and tribulations that I'm going through, so that when I come out of it victorious, say hallelujah, amen. So when I come out of the challenges victorious, she understands that I didn't just get this thing simple, right? I didn't just do it in a very, very easy way, right? I actually had these problems, and this is how I fixed the problems. So that's what you should be doing in your one-on-ones. Give them context about what you're going through and how you're solving it. This is also where you ask them, is there any other work that you may have for me to do, right? Is there any other thing that you want me to take a look at as well? That's what you do. Then you ask them, you then share with them what you plan on working on in the future and how you plan on doing it as well. If you haven't had a promotion conversation with your manager, that's also a good time. Not every one on one, but from time to time, just ask them, hey, based on the promotion conversation that we've had or we're going to have, is based on the promotion conversation that we've had or we're going to have, is the work I'm doing right now setting me up for a promotion in the future? You have to ask. If you don't ask, you'll be there walking. And when it's time to get promoted, they may say, "Oh yeah, this work is not complicated enough, right? It's not the right caliber of work to get you to that next level." Then why were you doing it? Because you didn't ask, right? Ask for that type of work, right? That's what you do with your one-on-one. So in general, I like to use my one-on-ones and advise you use it that time. Also ask your manager or ask people within your organization what you should be, you know, different context, right? Or what your manager wants to hear. But I like to use it to, get to know them, give them updates about their life, my life, hear updates about their life, give them updates about mine, tell them what I'm working on, tell them how it's challenging, tell them how I'm solving it, give them context so they understand the caliber of the work that I'm doing, ask for feedback about how I'm approaching certain things, see if there's other things that they want me to do because ultimately I want to help them. I want to take things off their plate and then tell them how I'm going to then approach future work and then ask them for feedback based on the work that I'm doing. Is this on par with what we want, where I want my career to go based on the discussion me and you have had? So it's not like new, it's not French when I come to you and ask you, okay, what's up with this promotion? That's the way I say it. I hope that helps out, Alison. All right, let's go back to Instagram. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat as well. I'm streaming on three platforms, so it's I'll keep jumping one after the other, one after the other. What's the tech stack you use for work at Microsoft? .NET, C#.NET, primarily right now. In my old team, I used to use a lot of Azure, but I write code in .NET. The crux, not the crux. I mean the crevices of C#.NET. I'm writing core C#.NET code, like pure C#. Oh. Okay. How many programming languages are you proficient in? I want to say most of them. I've written code in a lot of language. Sorry, in a lot of languages, and the idea of proficiency for me when it comes to the languages is just thinking about, can I read code in this language? And for a lot of them is mostly yes. And I think the concept of an if statement in Java is the same as an if statement in Python. Is the same as an if statement in C. It's like it's a conditional logic, right? The way methods work in these languages, they're also very, very, very similar. So in terms of proficient, I've written code and deployed code in a lot of languages. So I think that's typically how I think of it. I haven't worked in Go, but I'm pretty sure if I see Go code, I can kind of tell you what's happening in there just based on code, right? It's all statement after statement after statement. All right. Could you share some more details about your coaching program? Yes. My coaching program is called the Pro Dev Coaching Program. It's designed for software engineers who have more than 2 years of experience, but are either looking to get a higher paying job, land a higher paying job, or just get better at software engineers in terms of skills. So we go through a few things. The first is figuring out what you know. We do this exercise where we write down all your background, all your experiences, and we write them in a way that shows you the value of the work that you've done before. So when they ask you that tell me about yourself question, you're not just rambling and rambling and rambling. You're actually talking about the impact of the work that you've done before, not even mentioning the programming languages, but the value that you've provided to those companies. From there, we then figure out what you don't know, right? For some people is, hey, I really want to I really want to land this type of role, but this role requires you to learn the cloud. How do we then figure out a way for you to learn the cloud without just taking courses, right? Yes, you take a course, but how do you then show that you know it, right? What type of projects do you work on? What do you add to your portfolio? That's the second part. The third part sorry, yeah, the third part is personal branding. What does your resume look like? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? How are you applying for jobs? That's really really important, because the reality is the way you brand yourself, the way you present yourself online, right? The way you write your experiences, the way you talk about yourself, it determines the type of roles people assume you are qualified for. You may be doing the work of a software engineer already, but if you brand yourself as a cloud engineer, or if you brand yourself as a DevOps engineer or a backend engineer, right? You may not necessarily be seen as qualified for certain type of roles, right? So we work on branding you properly, where if they ask you questions about, tell me about this experience, you're telling them the things that they want to hear, right? You're telling them the things that relate to the work you'll be doing for them, and not just rambling over and over again. We then go into interviewing. So there's two types of interviewing, behavioral and technical, right? Behavioral is, it's mostly based on your experience and based on the work that we did initially, where we learned about your background, the work you've done. I'll teach you how to answer the questions in a STAR type of method: situation, task, action, and result, right? Um, there's only around 15 to 20 behavioral interview questions that encompass certain types of responses that you're looking for. Ultimately, they want to hear that if you're having a misunderstanding with someone at work, you won't slap them in the head. I know it sounds funny, but that's really the reality, right? So yeah, we'll work on that. So, but majority of what we'll spend our time is the technical interviewing. Technical interviewing is where we do the lead code style problems, and I love lead code. So we'll spend around 2 weeks just doing several lead code style problems, where we just don't focus on the problem solving, but we focus on the communication as well. If you're stuck, what do you say? Do you just stand there looking at them like this? They're looking at you, you're looking at them. They're looking at you, you're looking at them. Or do you, kind of use the process of elimination to kind of like go through and say, okay, yeah, I'm trying to do this, but I know this won't work because of this. And I'm having a hard time coming up with this, right? We basically just go through that with practice and practice and practice. And then after that, we go through, the final phase is offers and beyond. I essentially become a resource for you moving forward in your tech career. If you're like, hey, I'm having a hard time getting promoted at work because of ABC, you can reach out to me. We'll sit down. We'll dissect what you're doing, what you should start doing, what you should stop doing. If you're like, hey, I have a job offer, but I want to negotiate to get a higher salary, hit me up. Let's work together, and that's what the whole coaching program is about. If you're interested, it's at prodev.umacodes.com. Feel free to go apply. Again, it's prodev.umacodes.com. All right, let's go to YouTube. What if your manager is not that technical or come from an engineering background? Help them understand it. Draw diagrams. You know what I mean? Do what you need to for them to understand the complexity of the work. Find things that relate, right? Help them understand it, right? It's hard, but the reality is, if your manager doesn't understand the complexity of the type of work that you're doing, if your manager doesn't understand that, then they may not necessarily see the work that you're doing as hard, and that's not good, because they won't advocate for you as much as someone else will, right? They won't advocate for you as much as someone that understands the complexity of the complexity of the work that you're doing. So just try to work with them. Try to find things that you can try to relate it to. If you need to share your screen and show them stuff during your one-on-one, do that. I'm not saying do that every one-on-one, but spend the time in doing that. Do you like Skibidi? I do not know who Skibidi is. All right. Yeah. How important are data structures in the real world? To be honest, data structures are, I think they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just for technical interviews. It's important to understand how they work in relation to programming and systems and stuff like that, but they don't quite hold as much value in the real. I can't remember the last time I used a stack. I swear to God. I know how it works. I know the concept behind it. Last in, first out, queues, first in, first out, hash map. I can't remember the last time I used a stack. If you write code in a recursive method at work, they're going to kick you out. right? Like they're going to literally shove you out because you're just adding unnecessary complexity. So in the real world, they're not as important, but for technical interviews, they're important because this is the way I see it. If you can understand data structures and you can apply them to solve problems, the actual work that you'll be doing will be like beans and Gary. Sorry. Yeah, beans and Gary. It will be simple. You understand? Like it will be so simple that okay, they've already done this thing that's complicated at this level. Yeah, the actual work they'll doing, they'll be able to figure it out. And I know technical interviewing is not a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a true representation of your knowledge, but it's what we have. And I would just recommend that you learn it, you understand how it works. But yeah. Yeah, I met this software engineer at a big company and I asked him about binary trees, and he couldn't really say much about what it was. It was, yeah, why am I using binary trees at work? Why? I know what they are. I know how it's different from a binary search tree. I know the trees. I know all those things, but it's not actually needed for you to do your job. As I said, it's just a way for you to understand how. All right, if you understand it, it's a lot simpler for you to do your actual job because it's not as complicated. Your actual job would be less complicated. All right, back to LinkedIn. Um, this really resonates with me, Uma. Lately, I've been getting thoughts. So I can actually do the job without it. Yes, data structures helps you improve your problem solving skills and helps you write efficient code. I agree, Mary. Yeah, it's it helps you think about code from a different perspective, not necessarily used in like your everyday job, but it's still part of code, right? It's still part of writing code cleanly, right? Instead of maybe using four or five for loops. That's wild. Using three or four for loops to solve a problem. You can just, use one of the data structures to solve the problem and then, make the time complexity better. But in reality, in an actual job, it doesn't actually quite matter as much as you think. Yeah. Thank you. From your perspective, is it essential to utilize AI for the average person? Yes. AI, um, AI is, I don't know. I feel like after going to Google I/O and seeing what you could do with AI, my perspective completely changed. I think it's essential to utilize AI because it almost doubles your productivity. It almost doubles your outcome in terms of how how much you're able to get done or how fast you can unblock yourself or other things that you can do. Because it's almost like having a personal assistant that can do anything if you ask it the right way. And if if you're working on a project, right? If you're trying to draft an email, if you're trying to do whatever as it relates to text, right? Start incorporating AI to either make things simpler for you. I'll give you an example of how I use AI. When I'm writing my script for my videos, I write down everything I'm thinking, right? I literally just throw all my thoughts. Like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is this part, this is that part, this is that part, this is that part, this is that part. And I just copy and paste it in ChatGPT and I ask it, make like I tell it what I'm trying to say. I also tell it, okay, this is what I want you to do, right? Make certain parts flow better, make the transition between this part and this part better. If you see that there's too much words that I'm writing in there, right? If you see that I'm duplicating my thoughts, remove it and just make this much better. And you press enter, and that's the work of a copywriter, or that's the work of not a copywriter, like a script writer, for example, right? And all of a sudden, what would have taken me 2 or 3 days to do, because I like to write my thoughts, then leave, then come back, clean it up, then leave, then come back and then add more stuff. In like maybe a 15 to 20 minute session, I can write a script for one video. with the help of AI. Now, that's just one way, right? There's so many other ways where you can use this multimodal capabilities, and that's really, really huge because it kind of sets you up to be able to do more than you can by than just yourself. So I think it's important. It can find insights that we may not necessarily find, or insights that will take us a lot longer time to find. And that's typically how I use AI. I actually had this series about interesting ways that I've used AI, but I kind of stopped that. I think I'm going to start doing it again. Okay. Okay. Um, I am in a new tech space. Beginner. What advice do you have for me? Just build. I am in the new tech space, a beginner. What advice do you have for me going forward in this journey? Just try to build. Just try to build, man. Write code, build. Um, Spend more time writing and implementing the second you're done with just watching, right? The second you're done absorbing the tutorials and absorbing the information, start to build. That's the advice that I'll give. Yes, I agree with you, Samson. Data structures don't matter until you do. It's better to know them than not to, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot better to know why a stack is first in, first out than not to know it at all. It's kind of like the core concepts that you learn when you're in school. So, yeah. If you have any more questions, drop them in the chat. I am more than happy to take a few more questions before we start wrapping up. Okay, on YouTube, Kome is asking, how do you think beginners can use AI in learning? That's a great question. That's a great question. I try to use it in guiding me and not show me the code because I still want to be able to learn and figure things out. Yes, using beginners AI. I think the way I would go about using it is to unblock myself. I think it's a great debugging tool in terms of, all right, I'm having this problem with this code or with this stack trace, and I don't know how to read the stack trace. Or I've tried reading the stack trace and it's not just making sense at all. How do I go about um how do I go about debugging it? How do I go about unblocking myself? That's typically how I would think about using AI as a beginner as I learn to code. You can also use it to help give you ideas for certain projects. That's one way. Let me see. What else? Yeah. I think if you have an idea for a project and you're like, I want to work on this project to do this, or I want to work on that project to do that, and I don't know how to start, I don't know where to start, using AI is a great resource to help you break down the projects to say, okay, what are the classes or what are the pages involved in building this application. When I first started, I had a lot of ideas about, okay, I want to build an app that does this, I want to build an app that does that, but I didn't even know where to start. And I realized that it all boils down to the data ultimately. Programming is about getting data from somewhere, storing it, sending it to a user, storing it in a database, collecting it from a user, doing something with it, or storing it in a database and then displaying it for displaying it to other users, for example. So in this case, I'm on a live stream, whatever platform that you're seeing this on. The data that's being generated is from my camera, is going to a streaming software that's created using code, probably in the C++ backend because probably super fast. Not probably, definitely fast. And then that stream is now being streamed to a web server somewhere, and then you're now all connected to the web server. I could sit here and talk about all that this all day, but the idea is data is being generated and it's being stored and shared somewhere, and that's typically how or what programming is. So that's how, if you think about it that way, you can whatever project that you have, you can start to think about, okay, where's the data coming from, right? Is it coming from the users? Okay, I need to create a form field. I need to create this page. I need to do that. I need to do this, right? So yeah, and ChatGPT or whatever AI models can definitely help with all of that stuff. That's a good way for beginners to use AI. What do you think of Grok over ChatGPT for dev? To be honest, I haven't tried Grok. I honestly don't know. I think it's one of those early adopters thing where I've always only used ChatGPT for some reason. I actually do want to try Cursor AI. My friend introduced me to Cursor AI. Is this extension? Sorry, is this code editor that's built off VS Code, and it basically it has AI integrated into it, and not just like um GitHub Copilot where it's one aspect. It's like the whole code base. It has the entire context. I actually want to try it. I will try it and I'll leave a review for it. But yeah. Let's go back to LinkedIn. What's your take on Scala? I haven't used Scala. Let me look into it real quick. Scala. I honestly don't know. Scala is one of the programming languages that I haven't had any experience in. I also haven't heard about it a lot. So I don't have enough information to have an opinion or a take on Scala. Oh, interesting. Okay. Um, how many interviews did you have to do before I get a job at Microsoft? Man, getting into Microsoft's story was very interesting. So I had to do, I think, 5 in total, all on the same day. But prior to that, they came to campus to interview. But even prior to that, they had been coming to campus to try to interview, and I kept interviewing with them. And I told you I kept failing the interview because I did not care. Like, I would walk in there, the recruiter would ask me, not the recruiter, the interviewer would ask me a question. It would be a simple question, like a 15-minute interview type of something. I'm like, listen, ask. Like, I'm not. This was when I was a freshman. When I was a junior stroke senior. I spent like 2 years as a senior because I switched major, but I could not care less about that interview because I had internships with smaller companies in the Midwest that were paying me good money. I was learning, I was writing code, and the idea of doing all that work to land at the FANG, I could not care less. So they would come in, they would ask me the question, and I would look at them and say, "Listen, you know, I know that that I know that I don't know how to reverse a binary tree, right? We can end this interview now and just call it a day. Let me go to the dining hall and eat whatever I eat, and you can call in the next person because I'm not about to waste my time." I couldn't quite care. I really couldn't care less about it. But my senior year, I realized, okay, let me lock in, right? Let me lock in. Let me figure out, okay, how do I actually get better at this technical interviewing thing? And so I locked in, right? I did Pramp. Pramp.com is a great resource. I think they're now try Exponent free, where you go in and you basically go in and you do mock interviews with people. You do like a lot of mock interviews with people. You interview them, they interview you. I used that. I grinded lead code. I grinded neat code. Yeah. Shout out to neat code, great resource. And I got better at it. And so when time came for them to ask, sorry, when they came to campus my final year and they were asking me, hey, give me so and so, right? Give me, I think the problem was you have a linked list and there's a cycle in the linked list where one node points to the different node. How do you figure out that there's a circle in this linked list? I say, listen, I've practiced, but I don't know this one. I was there sweating. I was sweating. I say, listen, I honestly don't know. She said, try it. I say, yeah, you put everything in like a map. If you see it before, if you see the node before, you've seen it. She said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I said, ah. Then at the end, it was not looking good. It was looking like I definitely wasn't going to get this. It was not looking good. So she then saw something on my resume where I was mentoring a freshman that just joined the university. I was working on a project. He was working on one end. I was working on the other end. And she was like, "Hey, so tell me about this project." I was like, "Yeah, I'm working with this guy. He said he wants to work on mobile apps. I enjoy working on projects. Let's work on the app together." And I honestly think that's what got me through that initial phase, because Microsoft is big on culture, right? Our mission is to empower every person and organization in the world to achieve more. And so that process of me mentoring showed that I was in tune with their vision. I was already a team player in that sense. And so they flew me out. I came to Seattle, and the rest was history, man. Every single question they asked me in that interview, I had seen it before, because I practiced so much. And the interviewer would ask me a question. I'd be like, "I've seen this problem before. I know exactly what to do." He'll say, "All right." Then he'll ask a different question. I'll be like, "I've seen this one too." There's no, I've seen this, but like, I've seen this, like, I did the work, right? I took 1 year off. Well, not 1 year off. I was only taking one class, but I did the work to do this. So any problem you ask me, I've seen it before. And I knew that they were testing my knowledge. Sorry, they were testing my problem solving skills. So I didn't necessarily want to show them that I could just spit out the answer, even though I knew it. So at the end of the day, I ended up solving problems that I'd seen before, but I, used the technical interviewing process, right? I used the brute force way. That's right. I always started with the brute force. This is why it's the brute force. This is the simplest way. This is why it won't work. And then I did the efficient way. And yeah, the rest is pretty much history. All right. Best way to learn systems design. Man, that's a good one. I think there's this book I have there. Systems Design Interview by Alex Zu. Let me see if I can get it. Yeah, this is the book. Systems Design Interview by Alex Zu. Where's the camera? Yeah, great, great, great book. This is how I would recommend you learn systems design, because it has a series of, you know, there's like diagrams and there's like things. It has a series of not use cases, case studies. It has a series of case studies that you can go through and learn how these systems are actually built. Because we don't have a lot of experience, right? As engineers, whatever we're working on is very, very limited to the space that we're in. We don't have experience to work with Redis, for example, but the book goes into, okay, this is what Redis is. This is why it's important to use Redis. This is how you use Redis. This is how you should not use Redis, and things like that. So I definitely recommend this book. Yeah. Best way to learn systems design. I would also recommend subscribing to Alex Zu's newsletters. They have some really, really interesting articles that kind of give you a high level and then sometimes details, of how certain systems are built, problems that the problems that the systems go through, and how they manage to fix those problems. Great, great, great resource. Yeah, Cursor is a banger right now. New Copilot. Oh, interesting. I did not know that the new Copilot this thing has that. Let's go. Hello, Kelvin. How long ago was this? I joined Microsoft in 2020. Spring 2020 was when I joined Microsoft. Mary on LinkedIn asks, "Thank you for taking time out of your day to do a Q&A. What kind of projects makes your resume stand out?" I think this is a great question. Projects that are complicated enough, but also relatable. Yes, that's the word, relatable. So if you told me you built a to-do list app, it's not as complicated, but it's relatable, right? Now, what story do you have behind building that to-do list app? That is very, very important. That's as important as the project itself, because you can then sell your passion for programming and your passion for building with that. I'll give you an example. One of the projects that I used to use a lot when I was getting into the industry when I was doing like job interviews and stuff like that was I built an app that converted music, sorry, that took your playlist from Spotify to Apple Music. The app is live. No, sorry, it's not live. I took it down because Azure was charging me an arm and a leg. Jesus Christ. That's a story for a different day. Um, I took it down, but the idea behind it was I had a Spotify music account, right? And Apple Music at the time was doing this promo where they would give you like 3 weeks free. No, 3 months free, I believe. I'm like, man, I really want to try Apple Music. But then I didn't want to go create all the playlists individually one by one, right? So why don't I build an app that does it for me, right? I looked online, there are apps that basically do it. And I looked at the Spotify developer API, creme de la creme, by the way. Beautiful API, properly documented. Properly documented. That's what API should look like. I also looked at the Apple Music API. It works. It does what it's supposed to do. And I was like, man, there are APIs to create the items. There are APIs to, you know, search for the songs on one platform. There are APIs to create the playlist, add music to the playlist. There are APIs to do everything that I would need to do manually. Why don't I build a platform that does that? And I did it with my friend, and we named it One Music. I did the Spotify to Apple Music side. He did the Apple Music to Spotify side, and we just merged our code, and we ended up just doing it. And the the story behind that project always gets people because everyone listens to music. They use Spotify or they use Apple Music. If they wanted to switch playlist, they would think to themselves, that's interesting. How would I actually switch my music provider? Oh, he actually built an app that does that, right? Now, on the technical side, I've used APIs that are outside just what I built, right? I've used APIs that are with Spotify, not one of the largest music streaming provider in the world. I've also used APIs with Apple, right? I have an Apple developer account. So working with APIs is not new to me. Now, doing that helps whatever person that I'm telling it to. I'm selling a story to say, hey, I had a problem and I actually solved my problem using code. And the problem was not a small problem. I ran into so many issues. I'll give you an example. If you want to transfer a playlist that has over 200 songs, you can't just transfer all 200 at once because one of the APIs is going to think you're trying to spam them and you get 429, which is too many requests. So you need to incorporate like some sort of like waiting, some pausing in there. Sorry, not pausing as in pause, but you understand what I mean. You need to kind of like limit yourself. So that's one example of project that I've done. Now I give this example to kind of like help you understand that the type of projects that you should be working on, they should have stories behind them, right? You shouldn't just do a simple something for doing something. You shouldn't just do a simple something for the sake of it. Yes, but you can, but those type of projects don't quite move the scale as a project that has stories, right? It has a story. It has a reason why you worked on it. It has an outcome and it's relatable, right? That's the type of project you should be working on. That's the type of project that makes not just your resume stand up, but it makes you stand out as well because you can talk about it in that way. Does that answer your question, Mary? Hope it does. All right, back to YouTube. What do you think? Oh, no, I haven't gotten into the software. Yes, Kome, you can apply for the coaching program. Hey, go Cyclones. Have an internship so far right now, thinking about what skills I have to sharpen before the internship is over, I'm guessing. If you have advice, fun fact, I go to Iowa State. Go Cyclones. Um, I think the most important thing to do as an intern is to it's funny, but just get things done and show the process show your problem solving stroke engineering skills as you're getting things done. So if it's hard, that's fine. It's part of the process. This wouldn't be the last time you're going to see something that's hard. The question is, how are you tackling the hard problems, right? Are you breaking it down into smaller problems, then going to this manager, asking them questions about this, then going to that manager, asking them, sorry, not manager, going to this engineer, going to that engineer, going to these people and like asking them questions about it, right? So that's typically what they look for as an in during your internship, because ultimately that's what will lead to the goal of you completing whatever internship project you have. So using your resources efficiently and communicating when you're stuck, I think that's really really important as an intern. As a recent graduate trying to get into the tech industry, is systems design important for interviews? Not as much as it is for a senior engineer or someone going into a senior role. I haven't heard of any interviews where they do systems design for recent graduates. So I wouldn't focus on it. I would focus more on just lead code style questions. All right. I have time for a couple of more questions. Um, any questions on programming projects, content that you would like to see me create, just anything. In the future, this will be slightly different, where I will actually have either someone's resume on here and we'll review the resume, someone's LinkedIn profile that we'll review, or I'll actually be working on a programming project and we can all work on it together, answering questions and stuff like that. So this was the first time I'm doing this, and yeah, I really enjoy interacting with you guys in this sense. Yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I have time for a couple of more. I asked that question because I am wondering what can be the value that brings. AI is getting good at coding, but sorry, he said I asked that question because I am wondering what can be the value I'm bringing to the table. As we know, AI is getting good at coding. AI is getting good at coding, but I don't think AI is going to replace us as software engineers anytime soon. It'll take time, and someone has to tell AI what to do. Someone has to go review code that AI has written when the code is not working, and it'll take time for it to get to that point where it's doing things not autonomously, but it's doing things just by itself and not, and not needing any help. Right? It'll take time. We're not there yet. When time comes, we'll see. But I really don't think we're there yet. Takado asks, off topic, what's the workout split looking like? Hey, I do a functional bodybuilding program. Mondays is chest. Oh no, not chest. He changed it. Mondays is push. Tuesdays is legs. So today I did legs. Wednesday is back. Thursdays is active recovery. So a lot of like light cardio and then mobility work. Friday is legs pull, and then Saturday is legs pull. But I don't go on Saturday. I typically just rest. That's what the workout split is looking like. How was Afrotech? Oh, Kristen, yeah. Afrotech was, man, Houston. All I'll say is they do have a problem in Houston. That is all I'll say. Afrotech was good, but Houston is Houston. I think there's a reason why they're gonna take it back there next year. Houston is Houston. Thank you very much, Story. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I promise to make this better next time. We'll have more. There'll be more structure to it. Um, I will send out a link if you want me to review or critique your resume, your portfolio, everything live. We will definitely do that. And yeah, I'll send out like a place where people can upload their stuff. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. Anything that I couldn't answer on here. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. And it was great doing this. I really enjoyed it. I think I'll definitely do it more. Next one will be sometime in December, and I'll send out more stuff. Yeah. Until then, Happy coding. Keep building. And as always, follow Umacodes for more programming. Follow Umacodes for more programming videos like this. Thank you very much.